hit the record button. Hi Inigo, so we want to go over the deck list and over the um, replays of the Legacy Challenge yesterday, and yeah, we want to show how the games played out and
Hello.
hope to get some good experience with that.
Yeah, I think the question here for me is obvious. Despite I think the main deck we are pretty on the same in the same page. The only difference with my preferred latest 75 is the third Poseidon and the Progenitus. Poseidon I think is just a matter of preference. But Progenitus, I want you to explain me the your reasonings for the main deck Progenitus because uh, I never tried main deck Progenitus. I'm gonna be clear here. But post board games, when you draw it feels so bad. It just put me off to try it from trying it rather.
Okay, so it's very easily explained. So we play a three natural order, and we want to have a couple of premium targets. I call that premium targets. And the reasoning with premium targets is that you want to have a mana advantage if you cast the natural order. You don't want to get a one mana creature out of your natural order.
Hmm.
So you get ahead on mana if you get Crater Hoof Behemoth or the Progenitors. And oftentimes you just draw one of your targets, and then your three natural orders doesn't really do that much. You can for sure get a Christ out of the deck, but that's not really going up on mana if you do it for 4 mana and sacrificing a creature. And oftentimes you cannot really use Christ in the same turn to destroy another target, as you already sacrificed one creature with the natural order. And also, Progenitus is a very fast clock and also very good if you have very low resources. And sometimes the control matchups are very difficult to beat if you
Yeah,
have
I can definitely
little
think.
resources.
Sorry, I can definitely see, and I've been because I when Newton was still playing it in the main deck, and then when I saw you brought in you bring it in for Malmo, I was thinking, okay, so with this hand, so for sample games, right? For example, oh, this hand, if I would have Progenitus in the main game one, would be so much easier. You don't have to build a board deck and then slam with Progenitus. With Heretihof, you just can actual order for Progenitus, and if opponent doesn't have a Supreme Verdict or dress down plus shorts to plowshares, they already lost the game. So I can definitely see the games where it's very strong. And I agree with you. I think you talked about it on a previous release on these very interesting videos you're making. That is very strong to have in game one. But I wonder if you are tracking the games where it's making you mulligan. Like
Sure.
how often is it does it appear on your opening hand versus how often is it actually helping you close the game?
You can, okay, makes sense. So I totally agree. So I would say that it's almost always is a auto mulligan if you have the Progenitus in your hand. And if you know that Progenitus is also very good in the matchup, then you automatically put it back into your deck. You can't really keep it then. If you have it on your opening hand, there are some exceptions for that. But I would say you can also see that in the matches we go over, or if you look at the matches from the previous challenge. I had a couple of games where I started with the Progenitus, and all of those were mulligans
Yeah.
and still had very good success because I would say that else is totally fine to get or to compensate in mulligan to 6 cards or even 5 cards with specific hands and specific matchups. But usually you want all of your resources for sure. But if you go down on one card and have a very solid hand with 6 cards, it still is very good, and then you have access to the progenitors. But as you told, I also was very skeptic about progenitors in the past, and also
We talked
even
about it. Yes.
tested lists exclusively without the progenitors and played two Crater Hoof Behemoths, for example. But for my opinion, I would say that it's a must to play two premium targets for the natural order. I'm not really willing to go down to one premium target. And there's also some problems with the rest of the slots. So very good access card to have access to is endurance, but the impact of getting endurance with a Green Sun CNET or the impact of getting progenitors with a natural order, there's a big difference in most cases, and there is also a very small exception of games where you win against the reanimator player when you have randomly endurance or found an endurance of the once upon a time. So this can happen also. But I think that it's in general, if I play three natural orders, there is no way for me to go down to one premium target. But for sure, I'm willing to talk about alternatives. So for sure, there are also other creatures you can get access to, and but Progenitus is the most efficient one. And another
Yeah,
reason for me to put it in the main deck is to get more value, and you get rid of one sideboard slot, and then you have an
yeah.
additional value.
I was just going to say that
But
because
if we
our,
want to, if we want to compare our latest lists, I would say, then we just have the difference that you play the endurance in the main deck and the progenitors in the sideboard, and me playing the progenitors in the main deck and the endurances, of them in the sideboard. So
yeah.
basically, it's the same configuration after the sideboarding. So we both have access to the same pool of cards. But I
Hmm.
wanted to say that I think that the range of matchups where Progenitus is very good against is much bigger than the range of matchups where you randomly have access to the endurances,
Yeah,
and
that can be true. Yes.
sometimes you live with it by top decking the Progenitus, and we see that over the event again. But sometimes it happens, but oftentimes, more often than that, you have access to the card with the natural order. And there are a couple of matchups where you want to have access to the card, especially low on resources, or uh, matchups like Jeskai Control and Moonstompy, Lance, Death in Texas. So we have enough of examples in the following
No, no.
videos.
I agree that the metagame currently is very is on such a state that resolving a progenitus is very good against basically anything but combo. My only concern is everybody is thinking on the good case scenarios, but I am very concerned about the the, the negative impact of a non-castable card in the main deck. So
Right, exactly.
when you go to the on an open field, because on the Magic Online, you most of the time you know what your opponent's playing. So I would say, yeah, I would say almost all the time. So you can even maybe accept keeping a six card hand if you are pretty sure of what your opponent's playing, and the seventh card being Progenitus, because because maybe you know what your opponent is in. But I think on a paper, on the real world, I would hate to draw Progenitus every time because you have to keep you don't move against that aggressively in paper. That's what I mean.
I'm not really following that latest statement, but because
Like for example, what I mean is, for example, imagine you open a seven card hand that contains Progenitus, and if you have the information what your opponent's playing, maybe you can take a decision of keeping or mulling, uh, based on your those six cards, except Progenitus and your opponent, and your opponent's current deck. But maybe in paper, when there's less information on a real on the paper tournament,
depends on the style of the tournament. So usually in
yeah,
paper
open deck
tournaments
list. You mean?
you can also get some information if you just walk through the tables. If you're
It's
relatively
true. Yeah.
um, fast with your deck, you can see and take a couple of informations by that, and also in, I would say, like small metagames where you play locally with a couple of players. Then after the first one or two rounds, everybody knows what each other player plays. So then it's also good. But as you explained, sometimes there are also very good six-card hands or hands with very good six cards where you can accept that you have the progenitors already. But most
Hmm.
of the time, if I know that the representatives plays a good role in the matchup, because
It's
the
auto
player,
mulligan, yeah.
it's an auto mulligan, and I want to have access to the card in the deck. And also there's a special way, but I'm not really suggesting to do that. If you're on the draw, you can also just go to the end step and then you just discard the progenitors to put it back into the deck.
Hmm.
But that sets you
I
up.
think we did that on our first stream together.
Yeah. It didn't work in this time, but that was another story, and I would say that it's more likely that it can work against Jeskai control now, but in the past, when we played it in stream, I believe that it was Band version, and then they played Uro, and they were too far ahead when we did nothing on turn one. But yeah, no problem. Sometimes it happens that you draw it, and it's unfortunate, and you want to reduce the amount of impossible casting cards, and that was also a reason why we decided to move Archon of Vader's Reach out of the deck
Exactly,
into the
exactly.
sideboard. But in the meanwhile, I was already thinking to bring it back. But in the green-black version, I don't think that it's really needed. And also, we have the two mind break traps in the sideboard currently, so it's a very good weapon against the fast control combo decks. And then probably we don't need the Archon anymore. And we are also very fast, so we have the option if we have a bit of backup by the counter spells and or the mind break trap or the endurances, we can disrupt the opponent in the first or second turn, and then we can still win on turn 3 or 4 with a nature order.
Yeah,
So
definitely. I agree with that.
it's not really a problem, but not really sure if it makes sense to discuss this here further, but glad that you asked me why I prefer to use the progenitors in the main deck. And I would say the impact of the progenitors in the main deck is a bit higher as the one endurance in the main deck. And
Definitely agree with that.
that was the reason why I decided to change that configuration. And as I already explained, I think it's good to have more natural order targets. Maybe we can also play 3 targets, but we don't have a good way to make any of the slots available,
Yeah, I
especially
also think we don't
because
have
of the
any other.
also shepherds.
Sorry, I also think we don't have any other very good target that we want. If not, we will already be testing it. Like I think we tested Elder Gargaroth for a while, the Industry Titan, but they didn't really do anything new or fix anything for us. So yeah, I think for now, Crater Hoof and Progenitus will be our 2 stars here.
Yeah, for sure. And Newton also says that if you resolve the natural order and get a big creature out of the deck, the big creature has to win the game on the spot, basically. And there are not that many of the big creatures which can provide that to us. But the Progenitus for sure is doing in basically in 2 turns, and the Crater Hoof is usually in 1 turn, but sometimes there are also exceptions where you can attack the opponent and use the Crater Hoof for a or like a removal spell that the opponent has to jump block, and then he's so much on low life, and then you can usually get him in the next turn. But I think we can um,
We
end
can move to
the
the next portion.
decklist
Yes.
now, and then we could just look at the first round, I would say.
Yeah.
Thanks for your words, and
See you round one.
just starting the round one.